Good morning, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not sure if going last or first after a technical difficulty is good or bad. But what I'd like to start with is there's 4 items that I'm going to cover today that impact each one of you in a different way. So if you're a banker, it impacts you relative to your institution. If you're a private equity person or a venture capitalist in the room, I could be the best investment you could meet all day. And if you're a consumer, you're going to be able to see what you should worry about within the banking institution. So I'm going to start by talking about innovation. I'm going to talk to you about big data, because everybody wants to hear about big data. I'm going to talk to you and pose a question that why, in the end of 2012, do the headlines of the papers across the world still have coverage of financial crisis issues as recently as this spring with the London whale, in light of regulations and all the things that have happened in the world. And the final thing will be is I will show you how we can have transparency be a concern of the past in the immediate future. So I'll start with innovation being the definition of innovation in the truest sense is taking something that's been done and making it better. So as you can see from my screen up here, it is not quite as sexy as those screens you've seen this morning, because I'm here to talk to you about accounting, the accounting of the assets, and the position record keeping of stocks, of bonds, of mutual funds, of derivatives, of futures, and of options. The lowest common denominator of the data in our financial ecosystem that feeds everything from trading to compliance to risk management to executive reporting, and more importantly, your customer reporting. And when I talk about big data, this by far is the most valuable piece of big data that exists in the financial ecosystem. It's the lowest common denominator, and no matter where you are at in the world, the position of what you buy or sell on an asset should be accounted for consistently and accurately at all times, real time. So why did the headlines still come up with questions about the London whale or UBS? Well, what most people don't know is that we have spent billions of dollars as an industry creating faster trading, creating new security types such as derivatives, creating infrastructure to make everything go faster and better. But the refresh of the back office technology that runs the world's assets at the lowest common denominator, the position level, is being managed on systems that are over 20 years old. I'd ask you to consider that data-driven decisions enable executives to make decisions based on the evidence rather than their intuition. The systems that are processing the back office were developed and not been refreshed and still being sold 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Bill Gates introduced 1.0 of Windows, and Steve Jobs introduced the Mac. Today, more traffic crosses the internet every second that was stored across the entire internet in 2000 or in 20 years ago. So we're going to talk about this horizontally, and we're going to talk about it vertically. We're going to talk about it in multi-jurisdictional fashion, and we're going to talk about it by individual lines of business. Our product is Basis Point, and it's been evolved. I had spent 29 years working for many of the legacy systems within the back office space. So put together the company with a fair amount of depth of information of what was available. So what I'm going to show you is by going to our fund structure. If you looked at the overall firm, on the left-hand side, the tree structure that I'm going to show you, you can see a family office, a wealth manager, a Canadian asset manager, an insurance company, and an international bank. Any one of you can have multiple lines of business within the same institution, by region, by lines of business. And within each one of these, our tree can expand. But what you're seeing on my right and your left is you're seeing the conglomerate of that data based on that fund or portfolio by book and market, by base and reference currency at an aggregate. What I'm going to do for the sake of the presentation is I'm going to drill down, and we're looking at a particular fund. And in this case, I'm going to use an example of a fund within a life insurance company. And within one click of the button, I can see that this particular fund has 2 portfolios. And if I double click on the first one, I can see the listing of all of the positions that exist within that particular portfolio. We can see a graphic view, or we can move the graph, maybe. Not so much. That's my mouse, not my system. We can see by security type, all user defined. Every one of these systems or these screens can be multilingual by the login. Our identifier, we're looking at it by QSIP, but we can look at it by ticker, by ISIN, by CDAL. We can also look at it in multi-bases. So I'm looking at this on a GAAP basis by US GAAP. But I could look at it by IFRS. I could look at it by Japanese GAAP. All of that is driven by the fund and the preferences that you would set up. So if we go and we take a look at a mortgage-backed security, with one click of the button, I can see all of the transaction details. That would be the buys and the sells. That would be the cancels and the rebooks and the corporate actions. And all of the associated detail, including the date, the accrual date, the principal amount, all of the data in one place, real time, online, again, by 3 levels of currency. We have base, reference, and local currency stored at the position and the lot level at all times real time. With another click of the button, I can see the details. I can see the trade details on one side. I can see my accounting details on the other. On the bottom, I can see information about the security itself. But if I close that and we take a look at a Japanese bond, we see that we have 3 lots of this. So if I go to the lot level detail, on my screen, by base, by reference, and by reference currency, I can see the value date, the market value, the amortized cost, the book value, the FX gain or loss. All the granularity of such detail is required to feed the general ledger systems. It's required for the regulators that are passing regulations, for instance, in Singapore, with the new regulation for FAIR, to drive transparency here. If I close that, and I'll go back to my bond, and I take a look at the fund screen, this is all the parameters of the fund. So we've gone from the firm to the portfolio to the fund. There's 8 levels of hierarchy. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. Well, let me tell you real quickly that I'm not the button. God almighty.
Sorry, Pam. I think we have to leave it there for now.